It's been a hot second since I last did a video covering a movie in depth on this channel. The last one I did is still doing surprisingly well, in views at least. So why not talk about another? Who here knows about the 47 Ronin? Given that it's one of the most famous stories in Japan's history, I'm willing to bet there's at least a few of you. The story of the 47 Ronin, or Chushingura, is one about honor, loyalty, and sacrifice. It's the story of a group of Ronin avenging the death of their master by killing the man responsible for it. It's a story so inspiring that not only did the shogun agree to give them an honorable death, but they would be remembered for generations to come.
Impressed? Always like to keep my audience riveted.
Okay, this is a long-winded joke to say that the 47 Ronin is what happens when a bunch of Americans make a film about Japan and come up with a cinematic equivalent of Panda Express.
You think I care if you starve?
Even Keanu Reeves can't save this one, guys. Roll intro. Believe it or not, there was a time not too long ago when Keanu Reeves wasn't the beloved cultural icon he is today. It may be surprising for some, but between 2004 and 2014, Keanu kinda just floated around. He was still making films, but he didn't have the same success he had from the 80s to the mid-2000s. His popularity seemed to come from his older films and some good old memes.
Well, look how sad he is.
Now, if you were one of those people who always loved Keanu and never ever thought badly of him in his darkest hour,
Good for you!
at first, 47 Ronin sounded like his way back into blockbuster filmmaking. It was a big-budget action film with a great cast and inspired by a real historical event. Okay, let me go and... there we go. This wasn't the first time a movie version was made about the 47 Ronin, of course. In addition to the many television series and plays, there are several film adaptations. Among the more famous ones are the 1941 version, which didn't even show the final battle, and the 1962 version, which did find an audience overseas. But these were all Japanese productions.
Knock knock. It's the United States.
Why not give America a shot at telling it? Did it work? No, not really.
Oh no!
47 Ronin flopped hard. Not only did it get trashed by critics and audiences, but it became one of the biggest box office bombs of all time. Now, a box office bomb doesn't always mean a bad film, but in this case it happens to be exactly that. It's honestly a bit surprising that Keanu's career didn't suffer because of this. Can't say the same for the director, but we'll get more into that later. Movie Synopsis, I know. Now, while 47 Ronin does follow the original story, it does so in the loosest of ways possible. So don't take this film as an official telling of the story. It's like watching Pocahontas and thinking you know the history of Jamestown. Spoiler alert, it ended in death. It's Japan in the year of 1701. The ruler of the Ako domain, Lord Asano, is set to receive the shogun. But the evil Lord Kira is also coming to visit. He wants to take over Ako to expand his domain and maybe get Lord Asano's daughter Mika too.
Your concubine was so lovely.
How does Kira plan to do this? By working with a witch, of course. Named Witch.
How original.
She doesn't exist in the original story, and I have no idea why they're working together to begin with. Because they're evil, I guess. First, the witch takes out one of Asano's men before a major duel. The replacement warrior is quickly revealed as a fake, and Keanu, and the shogun is not happy.
Beat him.
And then the witch poisons Asano, making him think Kira is attacking his daughter. Even though it's obvious that he was possessed during all of this, the shogun doesn't care to investigate and forces Asano to commit seppuku.
It's been one of those days.
Now that Asano is dead, the shogun gives Kira the Ako domain and allows him to marry Mika, although she does get 1 year to mourn before that. As for Asano's men, they become Ronin and are forbidden from seeking vengeance on Kira.
You are now Ronin, masterless samurai.
Hey, that's the name of the show.
Kira then imprisons the principal counselor Oishi for a year, thinking it will break his spirit. Yeah, that doesn't work, because the moment he's freed, he gets the Ronin together to save Mika and get revenge.
Sending Kira to hell!
Alright.
At this point, you're probably thinking, where the hell does Keanu Reeves fit into all of this? Well, that comes from another major deviation from the original story. Keanu plays Kai, a mixed-race man taken in by Asano as a boy. And everyone hates him. Because, you know, he's a half-breed.
I'd rather have been killed by that beast than saved by a half-breed.
And because he was raised by the Tengu. Kai knows all about magic and crap like that and actually figured out Kira was working with a witch. But he was entirely ignored by everyone, because even though this is a world of
Witches and demons.
a witch is just too far out there.
Then I suggest you are simply bewitched by a beautiful girl.
He also has the hots for Mika because the whole revenge plot was clearly not enough. So once Oishi frees Kai from slavery, the two agree to work together to stop Kira. Boredom and tedium ensue. Would it come as a shock that this film was a massive clusterfuck to make? Probably not. So where do I start? It's 2008 and Keanu Reeves agrees to star in this film. The script got attention by being featured on that year's Blacklist competition. Good start, I know. The writer is Chris Morgan, the man behind classics such as...
You know what DK stands for? Donkey Kong.
The studio says it will be a stylized version of the story that mixes fantasy and gritty battle scenes. A year passes and they get Carl Rinsch on board as the director. He has no prior feature film credits, but he has shot commercials and short films before. And having worked with Ridley Scott, the studio decides to give him a shot. Rinsch has the idea of making the film more Japanese and similar to an art house samurai movie. What exactly art house means, I have no idea. Perhaps something like Kagemusha? If so,
Ain't so bad.
I wonder if the studio will be okay with that though. Another year passes and seeing that Avatar did huge numbers in 3D, Universal says, why not make the movie in 3D too? The plan is to release the film in November of 2012. By March of 2011, the writer of Drive is called in to spruce up the script, and a few notable Japanese actors get involved. No Ken Watanabe, however, that was just a rumor. Filming gets underway soon after, but wouldn't you know it, things start to go wrong. Because they decided to make the movie in 3D and even more fantastical, the budget kept rising. Things didn't get much better when the producers saw a rough cut either. Among other issues was that Keanu Reeves just didn't have much of a presence in the climax. You know what that means? A reshoots, baby! The film was no longer coming out in 2012 because the studio wanted to give Keanu something to do. This makes the budget rise even further to a rumored $225 million. And just to make things worse, they kicked the director out of the editing room. That's always a good sign. So December 2013 finally comes and 47 Ronin premieres in Japan. Japanese audiences are less than impressed. The film opens in third place behind a Lupin the Third film and The Tale of the Princess Kaguya. Why was this the case? According to one article, Japanese moviegoers hadn't heard of it, thought it was weird, or didn't know that it was based on Chushingara. How did it fare in America? Well, given that it was up against... It opened at 9th place at the box office. Throughout the entire runtime, I felt my eyes glazing the fuck over. There is a lot about this movie that doesn't work, and makes me wonder why the studio decided that this was the only way to tell the story of the 47 Ronin. To start, why did they decide to make this a fantasy movie? Because the fantastical elements add little to the original story, create weird tonal shifts, and never feel organically tied in. We'll go from generic samurai shit to
Ooh, a spooky ghost!
The magical aspect also creates problems for the plot. I get that Kai's an outcast, but why does no one think for a moment that something fucky is going on? Right at the beginning, they fight this thing, and it clearly isn't a bear. You'd think after fighting that, someone would take a moment to see that, yes, this whole thing is weird. But no. Even the action scenes are affected by this. The battles are already pretty average. They're short, bland, and mostly blend in with one another. So when you cram magic into them, nothing really changes. Hell, most of the time the Ronin don't even fight the monsters, so the stakes are pretty low. The only one who does get involved there is Kai, and we'll talk about that soon enough. You might be asking right now, what about a film like 300? That one is even more inaccurate than 47 Ronin and is filled to the brim with monsters and fantasy elements. But lots of people love it. Why the double standard?
First of all,
300 is actually a good movie. It's got fun characters, great battle scenes, and over-the-top art style that surprisingly works, and it's quite quotable. Sparta! And second, it at least offers an explanation as to why we're seeing these weird creatures. 47 Ronin doesn't do this. It presents itself as a tale of
Ancient feudal Japan.
And to know this story
is to know the story of old Japan.
Yeah, you know, the 47 Ronin, samurais, honor, bushido, witches that become bad CGI foxes and dragons, and creepy demon guy.
What the fuck is that?
All the school kids know the story, right?
Yeah.
Speaking of CGI, they spent how much again? I do not see how they could have spent anywhere close to that. If you give my editor some of that money, he could probably do better. There are some good looking sets and locations, yes, and I enjoy looking at an actual color scheme besides
blue
looking at you. But that's about it. The effects were probably dated when it came out, and they definitely look dated now, as of the year of the Lord 2021. The monsters, while appropriately ugly, are generic and unconvincing. They even use CGI for backgrounds that could have been, you know, filmed. It's just fake. I'm not exaggerating when I say that Makoto Shinkai's movies feel more real than this. How does a movie that cost this much look worse than a movie with a 30th of the budget? In case you were wondering, I'm talking about Takashi Miike's 13 Assassins, which is another film I recommend over this one. It came out 3 years before, only cost $6 million, and is better in every way. As for the cast itself, I have mixed feelings. It's not that the actors themselves are bad. Many of them are great in other films and they're trying their best with the material. But the problem here is that the movie is in English, and most of the actors don't speak it very well. I'm not trying to insult them, they're trying. But they filmed a version entirely in Japanese so the actors could understand what they were even saying. Why didn't they make the Japanese version available for American audiences? Listening to them in English not only takes me out of the movie, but it makes the already lackluster script sound even more awkward and cliché. I also could not care less about the characters they play. I can't even remember most of their names because they left so little of an impact. When your defining traits are, he's fat and he's racist, you're in trouble. In fact, 2 of the characters on the poster, barely figure into the story at all. One shows up twice before he's killed off, while the other shows up for about 10 seconds, and then he's gone.
And just like that, gone like an angel's kiss.
Our main characters are in a similar boat. Hiroyuki Sanada is decent enough as Oishi. Even though we root for him to get revenge, we rarely see more to him than that. His relationships with his wife and son are put aside almost immediately after his return, and we don't see how he's this tactical genius that everyone would follow. As for Kai, as much as I love Keanu, I just can't deny that he doesn't have a lot to do here. Aside from his knowledge about magic and fighting occasionally, he could have been taken out almost entirely. That's because his fights almost always involve something supernatural, which, as I mentioned before, rarely affect the other Ronin. The movie seems to know about this too, because they'll often cut to a random close-up of him as if they're saying,
Remember Keanu Reeves is in this movie.
There is an attempt to discuss prejudice towards mixed-race people in Japan with Kai, but it doesn't go beyond name-calling and the occasional beating. The moment when Kai is recognized as a samurai by the others should have come as a powerful moment, but it just feels hollow here. His relationship with Mika is also about as boring as you can get. Not only do they have zero chemistry with one another, but the few scenes that they do have together have some of the worst romantic lines this side of,
I don't like sand.
I will search for you through 1,000 worlds.
Rough and irritating. And it gets everywhere.
And 10,000 lifetimes until I find you.
Not like here.
I do find it funny how the movie kinda just wants to kill Mika off. Like, after her father dies, she's given poison by her servants.
It will end your pain.
And then the witch gives her a knife when she tells her that Kai and the others are dead.
Good night.
I get that she's useless, but you don't need to make it that obvious. The villains fare slightly better, but not by much. Tadanobu Asano always has this shit-eating grin and he's kind of fun to watch, but he's ultimately only the villain. He's not evil enough to make us really hate him or even that threatening. Rinko Kikuchi, on the other hand, goes full-on ham here.
No half-breed is dead.
It's no Academy Award-worthy performance, but she gives the film just the slightest bit of energy. She's probably more of a direct threat than Kira, but like him, we never know more about her aside from, she's a villain.
What is that? What is that?
I could go on and on about all of the smaller things that annoy me, but I'll stick to talking about my final major gripe with this film. The fact that it doesn't feel authentic. It's one thing for a country to make a film about another country's culture or history. If they were dedicated to getting the history and culture right, it'd be fine. Even a few changes to the story itself would be okay, since most Japanese renditions do just that. Even though there were 2 historical advisors on this film, the Japan depicted here comes across as this weird amalgamation of many Asian cultures. Now, I'm not some kind of scholar, but everything from the castles to the costumes to how it portrays Japanese culture just felt off to me. This is most apparent when you begin to learn about the 47 Ronin and how the beliefs and politics of the Tokugawa shogunate are woven into it. For example, there's Asano's assault on Kira. Whether he did it because of constant insults or poor treatment, the attack was directed at a shogunate official and at a very special ceremony, and an Edo castle. The same goes with the Ronin's revenge. As honorable as it might have been to fight Kira immediately, they didn't want to risk any collateral damage. Sure, both of these events are depicted in the film, and there's lots of talk about honor and loyalty, but it just gets boiled down to a simple revenge story. And as vital of a part as that might be, you'd come out of this movie knowing very little about what actually drove these men to risk it all. As for Bushido, it's brought up exactly once in this entire film, and it's right at the end. For arguably the most well-known aspect of the samurai code, I don't understand why this was deemed unimportant. It's not as if Bushido influenced Japanese law at the time, or that one of the major books on the subject criticizes the Ronin for wanting to take revenge. I'm actually surprised that for everything that got changed with this film, the studio agreed to keep the original ending. But even with that one aspect kept, once the credits roll, you wanna know what I'm feeling? The impression that the filmmakers are telling me, why yes, I like Japan, I like samurai,
Anime!
And manga!
And gaming!
that probably wasn't their intention, but that's what I'm left with.
I think mine is broken.
Did Hollywood learn their lesson with this movie? Definitely not, but I'll admit there was some semblance of potential here. The story of the 47 Ronin deserves a far better portrayal than what we got here. Did it need to be a one-to-one depiction? As long as it stuck close to the original themes and understood the time period, I think audiences would have accepted it. It has worked before, and it could have worked again. And if they did want to make it into a fantasy film, why not make the film its own thing so it wouldn't be tied to the 47 Ronin? It tries to do too much and doesn't really succeed at any of it. But somehow, some fucking way, we're gonna get a sequel to this film. And it'll be a cyberpunk one too.
Wake the fuck up, samurai.
If only. See y'all next time.